Hi everyone, my name is Mark Moikins. Recently I joined a design challenge in which they give you a design challenge every day to create a UI. So my first UI that I created was this one right here. And I created these text fields that have images inside of them. So if you're wondering how I did that, I'm going to teach you in this video. In this video, I'll teach you a little bit about the UI text field and how it's possible to add images inside of it, not only on the right side, but the left side as well, which is what you see here. Okay, so let's get started. Here I have a single view application open with just the background. We're going to add a UI text field. And as it stands right now, there's no way through the UI in which I can add an image. I can add an image through the view controller. What I have to do first is I have to create an outlet. And I'm going to show you two ways on how to do this. We'll call this the username field. And let's clean up some of this stuff that we don't really need here. Like that. Okay, and the main property that we're going to be using is this field right here. Username left view. And here it says the overlay view displayed on the left or leading side of the UI text field, or of the text field. So what that means is there's a placeholder for a UI view on the UI text field on the left side and the right side. See, if I come here, there's also a right view. Now by default, these aren't being shown because there's another property that we're also concerned with, and that is, say for the left side, we have left view mode right here. And the default for this is never. So it never shows this view. But we'll be changing it to always so you can always see that view. There's a couple other options too, where maybe you only show the view while you're editing, or you only show it while you're not editing. Now we can set this up so we do it in code, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, if anyone knows me, I like to be able to do things right in the UI to save myself time from coding. And if I do things in the UI, I can also reuse this easily in future projects. So I'm going to create a designable for it. Let's get rid of that. Now I can set up our UI text field to look sort of like what we saw in our project here. You see it's slightly translucent there, and it has some hint text. So I can add that right now. We want this to be username. The hint text is the placeholder text. It's the same thing. And we can give it like a dark background with a transparency. So maybe make it like a dark gray. And then we can take that and move the transparency down to make it slightly see-through. Maybe something like that. That's good. The username is hard to see right now. We're going to fix that later on. So let's create the designable so we can add an image to this. And since we're going to be adding more functionality on top of the UI text field, I'm going to choose UI text field here. And this is called subclassing, and subclassing is basically taking an existing control and adding more functionality on top of it. Okay, I'll just call it designable text field. Okay, so the first thing I have to do, in order to be able to use this text field on the storyboard, I have to give it an attribute called interface builder designable. And that just says you can use this class inside the interface builder. That's what the IB here stands for, interface builder. We're not going to need that. One of the first properties we'll need is a property to hold the UI image. So let's add that. And in order to set that image or select that image inside of the storyboard, we'll need an attribute called IBInspectable. And that basically means, it stands for interface builder, and inspectable means we'll see a property show up in our attributes inspector when we click on the UI text field. And we'll just call this left image because it's an image that will appear on the left side, and it will be a UI image. And I'm making it optional with that question mark. I'm making it optional because it's okay if you don't have a UI image. You can have one or not have one. Either way, it's okay. When a person selects the image from the attributes inspector, we want to take some action and insert that image into the left view property of the UI text field. I can do that here. So on the did set, I can just add this code here and say left view equals and then my image. But I'm not going to do that here because we have a couple of properties that we're going to be using. And instead, what I'm going to do is call update view, which doesn't exist yet because I have to create it. So in this function, I'm going to have the functionality that will display all the code in the left side for that view, for that left view property. Now for coming in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if we have an image first. So we'll say if let image, I'll just say image equals left image, whoops, this property right here, then do this functionality right here. The reason why I'm doing this is because left image is, with this question mark, it makes it an optional, which means this property can be nil or it can have an image, an actual value, an image. So by saying if let image equals left image, I'm checking if left image actually has a value. If it's nil, then this will evaluate to false and it will come down into here. Image is nil. But if left image actually does have an image, then it will put it into this variable and it will evaluate to true and come down into this block right here. So here I'm just going to say left view mode, there we go, equals always. So we will always want to show it. If there's an image, we will show it. If there's no image, then I'm going to say left view mode equals dot never. Okay. Now remember, for this property called left view holds a UI view. Well, we have an image, but it's not a UI view. What we'll need to do is take that image and create a UI image view. You know, like a UI image view. Now this property doesn't exist, so I'm going to create it. And I'll say let image view equals, and I want to create a new UI image view. And we're going to use this one right here because our image view needs a size to it. And that's what the frame allows us to do. It allows us to create a size for our image. What I've noticed is 20 by 20 works really well. And I'm going to use this constructor right here, this initializer. The integers are pretty easy to work with. So for the left, it'll just be 0, y will be 0. And for the width, I'm just going to say 20 by 20, like that. Okay, and I'm missing one more closing parenthesis. There we go, right there. Okay, so now we can assign our image. Image view dot image equals our image. There we go. All right, great. So now we have our image, and we're assigning it to the left view. So let's try that and see if that works. Let's see what that looks like. If we go to our storyboard, and I click on the text field, what I have to do is first use the designable text field. And it's going to update. Okay, let's go to the attributes inspector. Now we see a drop down for the left image, and we see the user right here. So if I select that, the user pops in right over here. Now take a look at this. This probably isn't exactly what we want. It's a good start, but you notice there's no padding there on that side. I think what will work better is if we add a UI view, and then that way we can adjust the padding, and then we'll add the image to the UI view. So it's going to be a UI view with an image inside of it. So let's do that. So we have our image view. Now we're going to add a UI view. And I'll say let view equals UI view. And for this, I also want to use a frame because I need to be able to give it a size and a width specifically to solve our problem with that padding. And we're going to create a new CG rect. And again, I'm going to go with the integers down here for the constructor. The x and y will be 0. And for the width, this is what I'm concerned with. Now the width, I need at least 20 points for the width. And I also want some padding to go along with that. So I could say maybe 25. Maybe I can have 25. So I have 5 points of padding there. And for the height, I'll just keep that at 20 as well, because that's the same as my image. And I need another closing parenthesis. Okay, now once I have that, now I can say view.addSubView. And I can just pass in my image view. Okay. And instead of assigning my image view, I'm just going to assign my view. Okay, let's see how that looks. It's compiling. Okay, so what happened here? What happened is when the image got added, the padding actually went to the left side. So our UI view comes over here. So what would we have to do to fix this? Well, instead of adding the extra padding to the width of the UI view, maybe what we need to do is add the padding to the X on the image view. The X property is your horizontal property. Like if we look here, X goes this way. It goes from left to right. X is at 0 right now, meaning it's going to, the image starts at the beginning of the text field. So 0 puts it right up against the edge. 5, we would need to come over to the right a little bit. So X should be 5 if we want it to come over 5. So what we'll do is, well, we'll leave this as 25 because we'll need that. But then X, we'll just put 5 there. So now we will go 5 points over, and then we'll have the 20 for the width. So the total width will have to be 25. So 5 plus 20. And let's see how that looks. It's compiling. There it is right there. So that looks really good. It's like equal padding all the way around the image. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. But let's take a look at something else. We have another problem here. Right now, look at the border style. Well, what if we change the border style to none, so there's no border? And we want to make our text field, we really want to customize it. We want to make it like a little bit bigger. So what we might want to do is we want to increase the padding. And you notice we also lost the padding between the image and the username as well. So we might want to increase this padding on the left side to match the padding that's on the top and the bottom of the image. So what might be a better solution is if we just give the developer the option to add a padding over in the attributes inspector. So let's just add that. I'm going to add another property here. And I'm going to mark it as IBInspectable so we can change it inside of our attributes inspector. And we'll just call it leftPadding. Instead of just calling it padding, I'm going to call it leftPadding because you might want to, after you watch this video, you might want to expand the functionality of this designable text field so it has a right padding and a right image as well. The right padding, having a right image on your text field might be good for in case you're doing any type of validation and you need to show some kind of warning symbol that the user needs to correct whatever is in the UI text field. So you can show a little yellow warning symbol, for example. And after they fix it, then you can hide that yellow symbol. Okay, so this we're going to make a CG float. And by default, we'll say there's no padding. And when the person sets it, when they did set it, we're going to call update view. So here, what we need to do is we need to, instead of using 5, we're going to use whatever the left padding is. Now this makes it a little bit trickier because now when they come down here and we want to use this number right here, it's actually going to be 20 plus whatever the left padding is. So I'm just going to create a variable here, let width. There we go. So now as the user changes, as the developer changes the left padding, it should update it. Let's test that out and see how that works. Okay. So here you can see every time I increase the left padding, it's going to move it over. And this looks about equal. The padding on the top and bottom, maybe one more. That looks about equal, and that will look better. We need some padding between the username and the image, right? So let's take care of that. And before we take care of that, let's just view something else. Now notice, when there is a border on here, that padding actually looks okay. And let's look at the different border styles. So if we use the inset one, that one looks okay. But this one, when you have just a line, or when you have no border, that's when we probably need that additional padding there. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to evaluate which border style is being used. And if it's one of these two, this is called line, border style line, and this is border style none. when border style none and border style line are being used, we're going to add some extra padding. We're going to add another 5 points. So down here where we have width, this is going to go on to the width. We're going to increase this width by 5 to give it extra padding on the right side. Because remember, this left padding, say it's 5, it's only going to be indented 5 points. And then anything after 20 will be padding on the right side of the image. So let's check the border style. If border style equals, and it's called UI text border style right there. If it equals none or, whoops, wrong one, or UITextField border style dot line, which is this one right here, then we want to take the width and we want to add another 5 pixels to it, or 5 points to it. We'll say equals width plus 5. All right, we got some problem here. Let's take a look at that. Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so what I forgot to do is just in the or, I have to do another evaluation here. Okay, like that. So if border style equals none or border style equals line, then take the width and add another 5 to it. Now here, because I used the word let, I made it into a constant, which means I can't change the value. So because I do change the value here, I have to change this to a variable, a var type. And that should get rid of the problem. Okay, yeah. All right, good. So let's try that now. Oh, I don't have to run it. I just have to go into the storyboard. Okay, there we go. So now there's 5 points of padding there. And when I go to none, there's still 5 points. But if I use these other types, you notice the padding kind of still looks the same, right? Okay, so that's good. We have some padding, and everything looks really good now. And I can change this. Now for this text field, maybe, if we're using the borderless style, a border style with none, maybe we want to give it rounded corners. So I'm just going to add that real quick to our designable. And let's add it up here instead. We'll make that the first one, the first property. And we'll just call this property corner radius. That's the same name as the property we're actually going to be editing. It'll be a CG float. Default value will be 0. There'll be no corner radius by default. And when I set it, I want the layer corner radius to be set to my corner radius property, which is this one right here. So I'm basically taking this property and assigning it to the layer corner radius. Wait for it to compile. Okay, very good. So now we have a corner radius here. And now as I edit this, maybe we'll give it 10. You can see there's a corner radius now. So that looks good. Everything looks good, but what if you want to change the color of this icon, this image? You have a couple choices. You could take your image in your asset catalog and just create another color and add it to your asset catalog here. But that kind of seems like a lot of trouble, doesn't it? So we're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is we want to be able to change this color in our attributes inspector. And what I like to do is I just like to reuse the tint property. So basically, my icon will use whatever color is set for the tint property. And in order for that to work, though, we have to come in here and select this image. We have to change the render as to template image. And when you render it as a template image, it's going to use whatever your tint color is and replace whatever color information you have in here, which is the black, and replace that with the tint color. The tint color will ignore anything that is transparent. And what I would do is I would come here on this image, and then I would change the tint color, which is by default blue. We probably don't want blue. We probably want a lighter color, right? Maybe like this light gray color instead. So let's come here, and for our image, we want to say the image view dot tint color is going to use whatever tint color is set for the text field, just like that. Now the thing about tint color, as of Xcode 8.1, the tint color will not come through, and it will not change the color of your icon or your graphic or your image. It will not change it on the storyboard. You have to actually run the project first. So let's do that. Very good. So now our icon uses our tint color. But now there's something else too about this. Let's take a closer look at it. Wouldn't it look better if our hint text or our placeholder text here that says username, wouldn't it look better if it was the same color as the icon? Yeah, I think it would. So let's change our designable text field. So whenever we set the tint color, we can change the placeholder text color too. And I'm actually, just so I don't have to zoom in, I'm going to change this to iPhone SE. Okay, in order to change the placeholder text color, what you have to do is you have to set, or you have to change that text to an attributed string. And what that means, an attributed string is basically allows you to add attributes to a string, such as bold, underline, the color, things like that. Those are all attributes of a string. And in order to set this attributed string to the placeholder text, we're going to be using this property right here, attributed placeholder text. And this is the styled string that is displayed when there's no other text in the text field. And by default, this attributed string for the placeholder text is nil. So we're going to create a new one. This one right here. And we want to create an attributed string. Not this one. We want this one right here. So the string is basically whatever is already in that placeholder text, whatever that hint text is. That's going to be our string. And then the attributes will be the color that we want to set for it. What is the string that we're going to be adding the attributes to? Well, it's going to be our placeholder text, right? So that's this property right here. This placeholder represents that placeholder text that is in your attributes inspector. So basically this property, placeholder, I'll just show you real quick, is this property right here. And that's the text we're going to be adding attributes to. And what attributes are we going to be adding? NS foreground color. Yeah, this one right here, NS foreground color attribute name. And our text color will be whatever our tint color is. So this property on the UITextField is basically your tint color. And we don't need that question mark there. And what is this saying here? Oh, okay. Now, this, it needs an actual string, whether there's one there or not. If I left it like this, say I left it like this, and we removed the placeholder text, this will fail because it actually needs some kind of text that we're changing the attribute for. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to actually check to make sure that there's a string inside this placeholder. So what I'll do is I'll just check. If it does not equal nil, then use the placeholder text. Else, right, I'll know there's actually a value in there, so I can use the exclamation point. Else, use an empty string. So this question mark and colon there, that's called a ternary operator. It's basically a small if statement in one line. So I could create an if statement up here, up above, and just say if placeholder does not equal nil, then use the placeholder text, else use an empty string. But it's pretty small, it's pretty compact, and we can just put it right inside of this NS attributed string. NS attributed string. All right, that should do it. Let's take a look and see what we got. There we go. So now you can see that the placeholder text is actually using the tint color. So if we come down here and we change that tint color to something else, maybe we want it like this, I don't know, this orangish color. Then when we run it, those two colors should match now. The image will change that color and the attribute, or the placeholder text will change. There we go. So that does it for my video. I really hope you can use this information to make your UIs look that much better. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing because I'll be coming out with more videos like this to help you guys really enhance your UIs and make them look beautiful. Thank you.